Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
You ready for the word?
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to Genesis 6, please. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Giants in the earth in those days refers to the days of Noah, and also after that refers to all the days after Noah. Okay? In those days and also after that. The flood was not intended to make sure that there would never be giants again. And we're going to talk about what giants are in a minute, but the flood was not intended to make sure that they would not be again. It actually couldn't. The flood was necessary to protect the pure bloodline of Yahweh in Adam. That's what was done. And that's an important point for us to make. The flood did not come because men were more sinful in those days than they are today or were at any other day. The flood did not come because there were giants in those days. And the flood would make sure they would never be giants in the earth again. Of course, again, we're going to define that word giants in a moment. The flood came for the sole purpose of protecting the bloodline of Yahweh that began in Adam and was kept pure through the genealogy traced from Adam to Noah. That's the whole purpose of Genesis 5. If you go back and look at Genesis chapter 5, we're given that genealogy because it wants us to know that that bloodline was kept pure. So that bloodline in Genesis 5 is given there so that we would know that it was kept pure through that generation. Not all generations, but through that generation. What happened to all the other bloodlines? They got contaminated or corrupted. Genesis 5 says over and over again, and patriarch so-and-so lived hundreds of years, and he begat sons and daughters. So there were other generations besides the generations of Noah, but those generations became corrupted. So if Noah's bloodline was pure, but the others were not, and they were not, that's what Genesis 6:9 means when it talks about the perfection of Noah's generations. What happened to those other generations? Well, we're told in Genesis, or what happened to those other bloodlines, we're told in Genesis 6:4. The sons of God took wives of the daughters of men, and they bare them offspring. This didn't just happen and affect a few people. It affected the whole earth, except for the generations of Noah. Every bloodline, except Noah's, became contaminated by the incursion or the invasion of the sons of God mentioned in Genesis 6:4. It began, we are told by Enoch, it began in the days of Jared. Jared was Enoch's dad. During the days of Jared, 200 sons of God came down and went into the daughters of men. We're told that in Enoch 6:6. Now, if you go to Genesis 5 and you do the math, you'll find out that Jared was born 1,196 years before the flood. You'll also find, if you do the math, that he died 230 years before the flood. Now, we're not told in what year of Jared's life that the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. All we know is that they came in during the days of Jared. That tells us that from the day that Jared was born until the flood came, there was 1,196 years for them to corrupt the earth, and that's exactly what they did. In those 1,196 years, this invasion happened, and offspring was born that was not from the union of a man with a woman, but offspring was born that was from the union of a son of God with a daughter of man. That's the reason that you have been hearing me use the term for the last few weeks, hybrid. Hybrid simply refers to offspring of two separate species, two different species. What is a mule? Say what now?
The male horse and the female donkey, the offspring.
Right the opposite.
Okay.
But you're correct. Did y'all know that?
Yes.
It is the offspring of a male donkey and a mare or a female horse. That makes a mule. A hybrid. It's not a horse, and it's not a donkey. It's not called a particular kind of horse, and it's not called a particular kind of donkey. It's called a mule because it is a hybrid. When a stallion and a mare have a foal, that foal is a horse. But when a jack and a mare have a foal, that foal is not a horse. It's not a donkey. It's a hybrid. It is a species that Yahweh did not genetically create. Likewise, when an angel and a woman have offspring, that offspring is not an angel, and that offspring is not a human. It's a hybrid. It's a species of being that Yahweh did not genetically create. That's the reason we read this in Genesis 6. Look in verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. We talked about it before, but let's rehearse it. Perfect in his generations means he was unblemished in his generations. He's not a hybrid, is what we're being told. Neither were his offspring. His forefathers were not hybrids. His offspring are not hybrids. His generation had been protected from this fallen angel contamination. Look in verse 10. Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. What does that mean, the earth was corrupt? The earth. Not just man, but the earth was corrupt. Enoch tells us this in chapter 7, verse 5. He said that the giants began to, and I quote, sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. They began to genetically modify animals. And we also know they began to genetically modify plants. Could this be where dinosaurs come from? Could they have been hybrids that came about as a result of the genetic modification of reptiles? It's possible. The main point, however, is not that. I'm not here to talk about the origin of dinosaurs. The main point is the earth was full of hybrids, genetically modified humans, plants, and animals. Verse 12, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Says it again, corrupt. It does not say, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, the people in it were sinful. It says it was corrupt. That's what happens when genetic modification takes place. Genetic modification is never good. We can't outdo Yahweh. Yahweh genetically created everything the way he wanted it to be. When man begins to genetically modify things, he corrupts things. This word translated corrupt means to ruin, to destroy, to mar, or to decay. The earth was ruined. Said it a few weeks ago, say it again. The earth was destroyed by men and angels before Yahweh ever destroyed it with a flood. It wasn't sitting as, man, this is a real nice place, don't know why he wants to destroy it. Men and angels had already destroyed it before Yahweh destroyed it. And that's what it says right there in verse 12. It was destroyed. That word translated corrupt is the exact same word that is going to be used in Genesis when Yahweh says, I will destroy it with a flood. Same word. They destroyed it, now I've got to destroy it. Okay, verse 13. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, there it is, I will destroy them with the earth. Well, the phrase I want us to see is the end of all flesh. The end of all flesh has come before me. He didn't say, I am going to destroy all flesh. He said, the end of all flesh is come before me. He saw that all flesh had been contaminated. He said that all flesh, except for the line of Noah, had become hybrid. Well, why doesn't it just say that? Well, it does. But we've been so busy coloring rainbows over Noah's Ark, pay attention to what it says. But that's exactly what it's saying. If we had eyes to see it, we'd have been seeing it all along. He is saying that all flesh had become contaminated. is filled with hybrids. Before Yahweh destroyed all flesh from the face of the earth, he said, the end of all flesh is come before me. He saw that the earth was filled with hybrids. What do you think he thought of that when he saw that all the earth was filled with hybrids? Well, he cut their days short and destroyed them. He's not going to let Satan take over his creation. And that is exactly what Satan was trying to do before the flood, was take over Yahweh's creation. He was seeking to take it over, fill the earth with his seed instead of Yahweh's seed. Yahweh's seed began in Adam. The serpent is trying to now fill the earth with his own seed. If he fills the earth with his seed, he's got a seed that he can control and he thinks take over creation, and he almost succeeded. Well, that's the reason for the flood. I'm going to say it again. Mark it. Keep it in your mind. The flood was necessary to protect the pure bloodline of Yahweh in Adam. Why is that important? It's important because of the promise in Genesis 3:15. Have you ever wondered why the Bible lists so many genealogies? Was it just trying to fill up the pages? No, of course not. It lists those genealogies because it's very important. There were hybrids before the flood and also after that, and therefore it's important to be able to trace bloodlines. Noah was perfect in his generations. Look in Luke chapter 3. You there? Look in verse 23. And Yeshua himself began to be about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli. And then it starts going down through there. Who was the son of, who was the son of, who was the son of. Let's just pick up in verse 36. Who was the son of Canaan, who was the son of Arphaxad, who was the son of Shem, who was the son of Noah, who was the son of Lamech, who was the son of Methuselah, who was the son of Enoch, who was the son of Jared, who was the son of Mahalalel, which was the son of Canaan, which was the son of Enos, who was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. Messiah's lineage is traced all the way back to who?
Yahweh.
Almost to Yahweh. See, Yahweh established a bloodline in Adam. But Messiah's genealogy is not just traced back to Adam, it's traced back to Yahweh. He's of that pure bloodline. Now read this, Matthew chapter 12. Matthew 12, look in verse 40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Does anybody know what the Hebrew word for man is? Adam. So what do you call himself? There you go. Son of Adam, son of Yahweh. That phrase, son of man, is used over 90 times in the book of Ezekiel. If I counted right, I counted 93 times. That the phrase son of man is used in Ezekiel. Every time that it's used in the Hebrew, it is son of Adam. So this is what the Messiah was doing. It is a phrase he used numerous times. He referred to himself as the son of Adam. He is declaring that his bloodline is untainted. All the way back to Noah, all the way back to Adam, all the way back to Yahweh. It is uncontaminated. He's not a hybrid. Now go back to Genesis 6. There has been a war raging in the earth that we've been oblivious to. And it's the war over whose seed is going to rule the earth. Yeah. Look in Genesis 6, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. I wanted us to read it again and focus on the word giants. I told you we was going to come back to that. We've talked about it a few times, but I want to make sure now with better understanding we clarify what that word is. The Hebrew word there for giants is what? Does anybody remember? Nephil or Nephilim. It's used only in one other place. Do you remember where that is? It's used here and only in one other place in all the Bible. Pardon? Numbers 13, verse 33. Numbers 13:33 says, and there we saw the giants, the son of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Listen to what that said. We saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, of the Nephilim. Or we saw the Nephil, the son of Anak, of the Nephil. Now, I think the wording there is very important. I think it is communicating to us that Anak was not a Nephil. He was not a Nephilim. Anak was of the Nephilim, but he wasn't a Nephilim. I think the wording is meant to help us understand that which is sometimes hard to understand. Anak was of the Nephilim. Let me say it this way. A mule is not a donkey, but it is of a donkey. A mule is not a horse, but it is of a horse. Anak was not a Nephilim, but he was of a Nephilim. Let's see if we can trace this back and understand it. Go to Joshua 15. Joshua 15. Look in Joshua 15:13. And unto Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and unto Caleb he gave a part among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of Yahweh to Joshua, even the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron. Anak's father is Arba. The city of Arba is Hebron. Hebron is the city of Arba, but Hebron, or part of Hebron, is called the city of Arba. Look in Joshua 21, verse 11. And they gave them the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is in Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, with the suburbs thereof round about it. What's significant about Hebron?
Where the angels came down.
Enoch 6:6 says that there were 200 angels who descended in the days of Jared upon Mount Hebron, and there they entered into a pact one another to take wives of the daughters of men. It was there that they swore to one another, I won't back out if you won't back out. I'll do this if you'll do this. And they all entered into a pact saying, this is what we're going to do. It was on Mount Hebron. This place that the 200 fallen angels came is called the city of Arba. Well, who in the world is Arba? Well, we don't know. We don't know where he came from. The only thing we know about him is he's the father of Anak. But we're told, listen to me, we're told that Anak was of the Nephilim. Of the Nephilim. So I'm going to ask this question, and it's a question only, because I'm a student who's seeking to understand what is written here. Does that make Arba a Nephil or a Nephilim? If you do any study on this subject at all, you're going to see the word Nephilim used a lot. And the word Nephilim is used a lot to refer to the hybrid offspring of angels. That's what people call these offspring. They say that angels were with the daughters of men. They had offspring, and the offspring are called Nephilim. I, at this time, do not think that's correct. The term Nephil is only used twice. Once before the flood and after the flood. And it seems to me to be a word used to refer to the fallen angels only. The Hebrew word Nephil, whose root meaning is to fall, is what's used here. And it's used to refer to one who has fallen but is a tyrant. That's what the word Nephilim means. One who has fallen but he's a tyrant. So when I use only what I'm reading in the Bible, here's what I come to understand. There were Nephilim in the earth in those days and also after that. There were fallen angels in the earth before the flood and fallen angels in the earth after the flood. before the flood and after the flood. And these angels that have followed Satan who enter into this realm, I believe that that's what this Hebrew word is referring to. Those beings only. The Nephilim are the sons of God who came into the earth and took wives of the daughters of men. And the children of Israel went into Canaan, and it says they saw Nephilim, or at least they saw one in particular. Listen again to what it said in Numbers 13:33. There we saw Nephilim, the sons of Anak, of the Nephilim. To me, this wording seems to be saying to us that Anak's father was an angel. His father was a Nephilim. They were offspring. Anak and his children are offspring of someone named Arba. Listen to the evidence. Arba is the father of Anak. Anak and his descendants, we are told numerous times in the Bible, were of massive stature and fierce. So Anak and his descendants are hybrids. Arba had a city. It's called the city of Arba, and it is, we're told, Hebron. Hebron's where the fallen angels began their invasion or their incursion. So here's what I'm saying. It seems to me that Anak, the reason he's mentioned so often, so much, is because in the days of Canaan and the conquering of Canaan, in those days and the days that led up to it before that, that Anak was born from his mother who had a child by by Arba, and Arba seems to me to be a fallen angel. His dad was a son of God, his mother was a daughter of men. As a hybrid, Anak is producing hybrids. He's filling the land of Canaan with hybrids, just as the earth was filled with hybrids before the flood. And not only is Anak filling the earth with hybrids, we know that he and his offspring are also genetically modifying the plants and probably the animals. How do we know he was genetically modifying the plants, or he and his descendants were doing that? The grapes are a testimony to that fact. So here's what we need to know about the hybrids. They were not of a pure bloodline. Yahweh did not create mules, and Yahweh did not create these offspring either. These offspring had a lot of characteristics that men found to be enticing. They were large. They had special knowledge. They knew things that humans did not know because the things were taught to them by angels. Enoch tells us that. They had special powers. They had supernatural strength. This resulted in two things happening. The hybrids began to be worshiped as gods. We'll talk more about that in days to come. How do you think Greek mythology was born?
Right.
These hybrid beings began to be worshiped as gods. You know why they were worshiped as gods? They were not human. They were born of angels. The second thing that happened is men wanted to be like them. When they found out that they could take on the characteristics of these hybrids, they also wanted to be a hybrid. That's the reason that all flesh became contaminated before the flood. They were enticed to be made like them. These hybrids are seen as being gods. They look like gods. They could do godlike things. They knew things about creation and DNA and genetics and physics that only a God would know. Here's the problem. These hybrids may have looked like, sounded like, and acted like gods, but they're not gods. They were the offspring of fallen angels. So guess what happened to the offspring of fallen angels? They were being worshipped as gods, but guess what happened to them? They died. People are worshiping them as gods, but these gods died. The bodies of these hybrids were not like the bodies of the angels. The bodies of the angels were eternal. The bodies of the angels don't die. That's the reason that at the time of the flood, that those 200 angels that caused all the problem, they don't die. Yahweh takes them and has the Gabriel bind them up and bury them. They're chained up in darkness. Let me say it that way. Right? Chained up in darkness. Their bodies never die. But the hybrids, their bodies do die. Goliath may have looked like he was an invincible God. David proved to us that he wasn't. By the way, let me just take a side note here, because, you know, when you just read all kind of things and listen to all kind of things. And I was reading an article a few weeks back, you know, trying to take the language we're given in the Bible and figure out exactly just how big Goliath was. And I read an article by a preacher who said that Goliath wasn't really all that big. He's making a big deal out of the lack of faith of the children of Israel. He said Goliath was probably 6'8" or 6'9", and gave all kind of nonsense to back up his proposal. Well, granted, 6'8" or 6'9" is big. But it reminds me of the preachers who also say, well, the Red Sea wasn't really but about 2 feet deep. Trying to disprove the miracle that took place there. Well, if it was only 2 feet deep, then it's amazing, because all of Pharaoh's army, the Egyptian army, drowned in it. Okay. Well, I think the same thing when somebody's trying to tell me, oh, Goliath wasn't but about 6'8" or 6'9". Wait a minute. Go read the story. Right. He stood across that valley on the other side of the mountain and terrified Saul's entire army. Right. Yeah. They weren't afraid of a tall man. They were afraid of a hybrid being over there that thought he was a god. I defy the God of Israel, he said. Yep. Well, how could he do that? Because he thought he was a god. Right. And the Philistines thought he was a god. It irritates me when people try to explain the Bible away. The hybrids may have looked like and sounded like and acted like they were gods, but they were not gods. They died. They died just like humans do. They're not human, but they die like humans. They took on that trait. They didn't take on the trait of the angels so that their bodies are forever or eternal. In that match, they took on the trait of humans, and they die like humans. Almost. Almost. When a human dies, it means that his spirit leaves his body. In death, the body ceases to function, and the you that is in that body exits the body. Your spirit does not die, but your body does. You never cease to exist. You do not. You merely exit the body that ceases to exist. So far, this exact same thing is what happens to hybrids. The spirit that is in the body of a hybrid exits that body when that body is killed or when that body dies. But after exiting the body, there is a difference between what happens to the spirit of a hybrid and what happens to the spirit of a human. One of three things happens to a human when they die. If they are righteous, they go to a resting place referred to in the Bible as the bosom of Abraham. And there they await the resurrection of the dead, made possible by Yeshua, so that they can tabernacle with Yahweh forever. If they're not righteous, they go to a place of torment referred to as Hades. It's not their final destination. They are there awaiting the day of judgment. They do not have part in the first resurrection. Blessed is he who has part in the first resurrection. They're waiting for a final judgment, and they'll die a second death. If they were martyred for the faith, there's a special place of rest for those spirits. So when you die, you go to one of those three places. Forget what you've heard in country songs. Forget what you've heard in gospel songs about cabins and fishing and walking with Grandpa. What I've told you is what the Bible teaches us about what happens to us when we die. But now let's talk about the hybrids. What happens to their spirits when they die? Remember, they're not Yahweh's creation. These other three places have been prepared by Yahweh for His creation. These are not His creation. So what is Yahweh going to do with them? Where do they go? The answer is, they have nowhere to go. Here's what Enoch said in chapter 15 of his book. In judgment to the sons of God who had offspring with the daughters of men, he said this to them, and now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits in the earth. He goes on to say that they are called evil spirits because they're spirits of evil ones. That's the reason they're evil spirits. He said they'll live on the earth because they're not spirits that originated in heaven. He said their beginning, and I quote, is of primal origin. They did not originate in heaven. Primal origin. These spirits will rise up against men and women because, this is what Enoch said, they'll rise up against the children of men and women because they proceeded from them. He said they will afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, war, and cause trouble with men. Let that sink in. The spirits of the hybrids have nowhere to go when their bodies die. They cannot go to the places that Yahweh's prepared for the spirits of His creation because they're not His creation. They're bound to the earth, and because they're still in the earth, we're told that because they came from men and women, they now will attack men and women. My question again is, why would they do that? Enoch said because they came from men and women, they're going to oppress, afflict, attack, cause trouble. Why? Perhaps the answer is found in understanding who they were before they died. Who were they before they died? They were hybrids. Hybrids who had great stature, great power, great knowledge, and were thought to be gods. They were once worshipped by men and women, and they desperately want that again. And when they don't get it, it infuriates them. These spirits of the hybrids think they are superior to men. They think they are superior to men, and they expect men to see them in like manner. They used to be worshiped and are used to being worshiped. Look in Leviticus 17. Leviticus 17, look in verse 7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a-whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. Yahweh is establishing Jerusalem as a place to bring the sacrifices. He says they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils. Look in Deuteronomy 32. Verse 16. They provoked him to jealousy, and strange gods with abominations provoked they him to anger. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God. To gods whom they knew not. To new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Notice that these devils are being referred to as Elohim. Devils referred to as Elohim. Yahweh is the only true Elohim, creator of all things, but these hybrids who came from the sons of God think they are also Elohims. Go to 2 Chronicles chapter 11. These hybrids think they are Elohims because they get worshipped as Elohims. Look in 2 Chronicles 11:15. And he ordained him priest for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. This is talking about Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. He has taken the Levites and brought them into Jerusalem, and he's set them up as the priest for those that want to worship Yahweh. But notice what else he does. He ordained him priest for the high places and for the devil and for the calves which he had made. We'll talk more about this word translated devils in weeks to come. They're worshiping these beings that you and I would call devils. But they're hybrids. The hybrids had an impact on much of the earth. They were, Genesis 6:4 told us what? They were mighty men. Gibberim. Men of what? Renown. What does that mean? They were famous. Right? These hybrids had an impact on the earth, and they're being worshipped as gods. They were fondly remembered, but they died, but they were fondly remembered for their size, their strength, and what they knew. They were thought to be gods, and people set up high places and images in order to worship these beings that they thought were gods. But they're not gods at all. They died. Every sacrifice made to them was really a sacrifice to evil spirits who were at work to deceive the hearts of men. Why did people continue after these? Here's what I mean. You've got this hybrid. People think it's a god. But it dies. So it's not God. Why do people continue to hold on to images and altars and likenesses they have of that hybrid? Why do they continue to hold on to it and still believe in their heart that it was a god? Say again?
They don't want Yahweh.
They don't want Yahweh, but why do they not want Yahweh? What would make somebody hold on to something that's not real? That's a trick question. That's the way we look at it. Say it again.
They desire to be that, become that.
They desire to be there to become that, but I'm not clarifying my question, and I understand that sometimes I don't. Why would they take something that is not real, whether it's a statue, an image, a likeness, and continue to hold on to it as if it is real?
Those tangible.
And the answer is, thank you, the answer is, that's where you and I mess up in our thinking. We think it's not real. It's very real. That body of that hybrid died, but his spirit didn't. And his spirit's still connected to those images. His spirit is still connected to those likenesses. Why do you think Yahweh says don't bring those things into your home? Don't play with those things. They're dangerous because the spirits are still connected to them. The spirits are real. The spirits are very much alive. And so these people understand that. They're still connecting with that spirit. That spirit still communicates with them, and they communicate with it. They're real. Our mistake is in thinking that they're not real. Wow. These evil spirits work in and through the images and the activities. People are worshiping and sacrificing to evil spirits, sometimes on purpose, sometimes unaware. Go to 1 Corinthians 10. I am bringing it to a close. You've been very patient. But we had to lay the groundwork to get to where I wanted to go. 1 Corinthians 10, look in verse 19. What say I then? That the idol is anything? Or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. Here's the reasoning of a lot of people. A lot of people, and Paul's addressing, a lot of people say, so what if they've got an image sitting up there? They carved it out of wood. They covered it with silver. They plated it with gold. It can't do anything. It's nothing. And Paul's saying, you're right, it is nothing. I'm not saying it is anything. But I am saying that those who sacrifice to it are sacrificing to devils. The devil behind it is very real. Right. And I don't want you to have fellowship with that devil. Amen. Does anybody remember what the Greek word here translated devil is? We read about 15, 18 passages last week. And we talked about this word devil, and we saw Messiah casting out devils and sending the disciples to cast out devils. Here we read it again. They refer to devils. Anybody remember what the Greek word was? Very good. Daimonion. Anybody remember what the Greek word daimonion actually means? We just say demon because it sounds like it, but that's not what it means. That actual Greek word means deity. So I want to make sure I clarify. That's where I've been trying to get. I want to make sure I clarify what I said last week. That the Greek word for these entities is daimonion. And the Greek word means deity. I want to make sure that you understand that what I'm saying is that's the way the Greeks saw these entities. The Greeks saw them as deities. I am not saying they're deities. I'm saying that the spirits think they're deities, and I'm saying that the Greeks called them deities. And that's the Greek word for them is daimonions. In Acts 17, we saw it that the Epicureans heard Paul preaching about Yeshua, and they thought he was talking about daimonions. They thought he was talking about one of these spirits of a hybrid that they hadn't yet been introduced to, and they was curious and interested. There's another one of these hybrid spirits. They wouldn't have dared call it a hybrid, but there's another one of these deity spirits we don't know about. We want to know about it. So Acts 17 shows us that the Greek word actually means deity. It's what the Greeks thought. The Greeks thought that these spirits that are roaming the earth are deities, and they honored them and worshiped them as such. They sacrificed to them. They called them deities, but they're not deities. They're evil spirits that proceeded out from the hybrids. Would you want to worship them? Would you want to worship them? No. Would you want to sacrifice to them? No. But they are masters at getting worship. They get people to do it by one of two ways. They get people to worship them by either, number one, through the display of supernatural powers. You see, mediums, spirit guides, seances, all that stuff is real. More and more today, you hear of people who are quote unquote Christians who are going to have their palms read, or going to get quote unquote a reading, or going to mediums who will help them talk to their dead brother or sister or grandfather or grandmother or friend or husband or wife. It is sheer absurdity to do that. Because the spirits behind that stuff is real.
That's right.
And people are fellowshipping, 1 Corinthians 10's words, fellowshipping with demons, with demonions, with evil spirits. So, they get worship through supernatural powers. In other words, they can be contacted and they can give knowledge. They can be contacted. They might endue you with power or understanding. We saw last week in the book of Acts 16, in Acts chapter 16, we saw where a damsel made her masters rich because she had an evil spirit inside of her. And through this evil spirit, she could foretell things that were going to happen in the future. It endued her with power. So that's how they get worshiped, is people want to fellowship with them and worship them because they can get rich. Right? People doing it today. Have demons. They're getting rich because people are coming and shelling out money. Tell me about my grandpa. Right? So that's one way they do it. What's another way they do it? They do it through deception. They get people to, listen to this, value items and activities that are connected to them without the people knowing that the items or the activities are connected to them. Do you know where Sunday worship came from? The worship of the Son God. A hybrid from years past. Do you know where Easter comes from? From Ishtar and from Tammuz. Tammuz and Ishtar were hybrids. What do I mean when I say they were hybrids? They're not fictional characters. They really lived. Who is Ishtar? Who is Tammuz? They're hybrids. What do I mean by hybrids?
Half human, half.
They had a son of God and a daughter of men as parents. They are hybrids. They are the offspring of that union. You know where Christmas comes from? Mithraism. It's connected to hybrids of the past. So listen again to this admonition from Yahweh in Jeremiah 10. Thus saith Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Dismayed. They are in awe of things they cannot explain. They tie their worship to spring solstices. They tie their worship to winter solstices. When is Easter?
First Sunday of the first full moon of spring equinox.
First Sunday, first full moon, spring equinox. Now what's biblical about that? Not one thing. They're dismayed by the signs of heaven. It is connected to a hybrid and knowledge that the angel communicated about the solstices. Listen to this. And so is Christmas. Christmas is tied to the winter solstice. Deuteronomy 12, verse 1. These are the statutes and judgments which you shall observe to do in the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers gives you to possess it, all the days that you live upon the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which you shall possess served their gods, upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every green tree. You understand that these people in these other nations didn't just make up their Elohims in their imaginations. The Elohims they worshiped were living beings that were hybrids. They worshiped the hybrids. They made contact with the spirits. That's the reason they worship multiple gods. It's because there were multiple hybrids. And each hybrid had a different power. So they're worshiping all of them. How could they have so many gods? It's easy. It's connected to the hybrids. Yahweh says this of the activities and the fixtures associated with these hybrids. Verse 3, you shall overthrow their altars, break their pillars, burn their groves with fire. You shall hew down the graven images of their gods and destroy the names of them out of that place. You shall not do so unto Yahweh your Elohim. Where do we get permission to take something that was dedicated to Ishtar, dedicated to Tammuz, baptize it and say, well, now I'm doing it for Yeshua? Where do we get to take activities associated with Saturnalia and say, I'm going to use it to celebrate the birth of my Messiah? We don't have permission. Yahweh strictly forbids it. He says, he didn't say a word about baptizing or assigning a new meaning. He said overthrow, break, burn, hew down, destroy every bit of it. People get angry when we say it, but their anger does not make what we say untrue.
Right.
When you hunt Easter eggs, you're not celebrating the resurrection. You are worshiping, you know what you're doing? You're worshiping Ishtar's spirit. Ishtar was a hybrid. She died. Her evil spirit still roaming the earth and still being worshiped as a deity. When you hunt her eggs, when you show up at her sunrise service, when you go to her Sunday, Easter is not an event, it's a person. It's a spirit of a hybrid person. When you participate in those activities, it's Ishtar's evil spirit that's being worshipped. When you celebrate the birth of the sun on December the 25th, Yahweh will not allow anyone to make that about his son, no matter how hard they try. It is a celebration of the birth of a hybrid who wants to be a God. When people talk about the spirit of Christmas, they are very correct. There is a spirit associated. To participate in these activities is to connect with evil spirits. To have images and likenesses in your home that are strictly forbidden by Yahweh is to connect with evil spirits. There are songs, there are signs, there are likenesses that become gateways that allow fellowship with hybrid beings, evil spirits. And these spirits are never benevolent. They are evil spirits because they came forth from evil ones. We need to rip them out of our life. Every image, every activity, every likeness needs to be ripped out of our life. And we never need to look back upon those things lovingly or longingly as though they were special.
Right.
They were evil.
Yes.
Thank Yahweh for deliverance from them. May it never be that we say, oh, I miss those days. Miss them. They were evil. To rip them out of our life is to free ourselves from devils. Demons are evil spirits. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. As his name is put upon you, so shall he bless you.